Hey everyone, Demonite here. Check this out. Nisha is weird, so in this video I'll be discussing various hidden mechanics regarding her skills, more specifically Ruthless, Unchained, the Third Degree, the Unforgiven, Crackshot and Tombstone. Some of these are beneficial to the player, but others not so much. Let's get started with Ruthless. It's a fairly simple skill in concept. What it does is that it increases your action skill duration every time you get a kill during showdown. But behind the scenes, it's not quite as simple as that. Nisha has another skill called High Noon, which grants you gun damage depending on how much time you have spent in showdown. Rather than increasing in increments every second, it's actually a continuous increase that grows linearly as time goes on. The base duration of showdown is 6 seconds, so if you were to shoot an enemy in the very last moment, you'd get a 90% gun damage boost from High Noon at 5 out of 5. If I use Cheat Engine to increase the duration of showdown, the damage High Noon adds keeps rising endlessly, so it can in theory go past 90%. You'd think there would be an obvious synergy between High Noon and Ruthless in this case, as Ruthless would allow you to spend more than 6 seconds in showdown. But unfortunately, you can never go past this 90%, as you can see in this clip. Even after killing a bunch of Torques, the damage never goes higher. My assumption on what is going on here is that rather than adding duration to your action skill, Ruthless decreases a different variable that counts how much time has passed since you activated your action skill, which is what High Noon uses to determine its damage boost. So while Ruthless is still a very powerful skill for Nisha, High Noon isn't quite as good as you might think. Ruthless will still increase the overall uptime of High Noon, but the average damage you get from it always stays the same. Moving on to Unchained. This skill is supposed to grant you a stacking fire rate buff every time you shoot an enemy that goes up to 21 stacks. Supposedly you can only gain a stack once every second, but this isn't the case for every gun, or rather every type of damage a gun can deal. Bullets as well as gun splash damage will only stack once per second, while grenade splash damage can't gain stacks at all. Launcher splash damage on the other hand does not have this 1 second cooldown restriction and will grant you a stack for every damage instance that hurts an enemy. The form of launcher splash doesn't matter either, whether it's pure or added or even something like a Tedious rocket launcher reload. Naturally, this makes launcher splash guns with a high fire rate or a high projectile count great for stacking Unchained, for example torque-barreled assault rifles or the Logan's gun. But the Boomercorn in particular works wonders, as it has a very high chance to grant you all 21 stacks with just a single shot. I'm not really sure what the deal with this weapon is, but for some reason its damage drastically increases sometimes, or rather it hits more often than it should. With just one projectile, it sometimes deals double damage, granting you 2 stacks of Unchained at once. With 2 projectiles, I've seen up to 7 stacks, and with additional projectiles, this just increases even further. At 5 projectiles, which is the gun's default, you almost always get the full 21 stacks. This happens more often when the enemy is near a wall or the floor, but even when shooting airborne enemies, you'll usually get more than 5 stacks. Another weapon that does this is the Minex Atonement, although to a lesser degree since it only fires 1 projectile and has a smaller splash radius. Anyway, moving on to Nisha's melee damage. Her most powerful melee buff is the Third Degree, which is supposed to grant you a huge stacking melee damage bonus every time you kill an enemy or showdown ends. At 5 out of 5 this would be plus 500% melee damage at max stacks. By itself that's exactly what it does, but due to its damage type it unfortunately doesn't play nice with other types of melee damage buffs. I will talk more about melee damage types in a future video, but to give you the short version, the Third Degree belongs to a very rare type that to my knowledge doesn't even exist anywhere else in the pre-sequel. It's not multiplied by either regular melee damage buffs or bladed weapons, making it the worst type of melee modifier, not counting stuff that straight up reduces your melee damage. Which brings me to Nisha's passive melee modifier. For some reason Gearbox decided that Nisha should always only deal 75% of the base melee damage that all other classes deal at the same level. It even affects Roid shields. Luckily this penalty is at least not applied to her melee override, Thunder Crackdown, or in other words, Thunder Crackdown gains plus 33.33% damage. So if you ever tried to make melee Nisha work and found it lacking, these two aspects of her might have been a part of it, although the main reason was probably just that her melee abilities were designed to be used alongside guns rather than on their own. Now let's talk about the Unforgiven, her right skill tree capstone. This skill has two aspects to it. For one, it makes bullets ricochet towards nearby enemies with reduced damage while Showdown is active, and then it also causes each enemy hit to explode upon Showdown's deactivation. Now, the damage reduction of 90% on ricocheted bullets is accurate, but what the skill doesn't tell you is that it actually decreases your base gun damage as well. It's the same type of penalty you find on things like Claptrap's subroutines, meaning it adds a positive value to a damage divisor. In this case it's 21% for every type of gun that isn't a sniper rifle or rocket launcher. Those two weapon types are unaffected. Interestingly, those are the same weapon types that are unaffected by Showdown's passive plus 42% gun damage, which is also double the amount of the penalty from the Unforgiven. Something else the Unforgiven doesn't tell you is that you don't need to hit enemies with your bullets in order to proc explosions on them. Any damage you deal to an enemy, be it with a gun, a melee attack, a Nova shield, or even just jumping on them, will cause that enemy to explode at the end of Showdown, assuming they're still alive when it ends. This is very similar to the next skill, Crackshot. It states that it causes enemies killed by the first shot of your gun to explode, but once again, you can cause explosions no matter how you damage an enemy. As long as your gun is missing exactly one shot from its magazine, Crackshot will proc explosions on every enemy killed by Nisha. This explosion also doesn't scale with the amount of points invested into the skill, so you can leave it at 1 out of 5 and still benefit from the full explosion damage. Now, I didn't actually find these two explosion mechanics regarding the Unforgiven and Crackshot myself. Instead, I came across this years ago when someone made a video about it, showcasing a build centered around these mechanics. I highly recommend you check it out, I will link to it in the description. It's essentially a build that doesn't require firing your weapons at all. What makes it work is what I want to bring up next, the Excalibastard and Tombstone. While you hold the Excalibastard, it allows you to freeze enemies whenever you crit them, which is quite a powerful tool on its own, as it even allows you to freeze some enemies that normally can't be frozen. But in Nisha's hands it becomes straight up broken, since Tombstone allows you to score crits with almost any damage you deal, even damage you deal to yourself. And that is essentially what I showed you at the beginning of the video, a critical hit from a grenade that froze the test dummy. Except that this clip still makes no sense. The grenade I threw was a nasty surprise, which spawns a bunch of grenades at the point of impact. These can teleport to enemies, but as you can see, none of them teleported anywhere and they all exploded too far away to hit an enemy. So how did that test dummy get frozen? I can only speculate, but my best guess is that the nasty surprise uses some kind of invisible zero damage Nova to track enemies, so it knows where to send its child grenades. And even though it deals 0 damage, it can still crit with Tombstone and as such freeze the dummy thanks to the Excalibastard. I noticed the same thing happening with the Pandemic, another grenade that spawns child grenades which seek out enemies rather than teleporting to them. However, I didn't see anything like this with transfusion grenades, so I'm not entirely sure my theory is accurate. But anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about for this video. Nisha's weird mechanics don't stop here. There are also many things to be said about her skills Hot Lead and Short Fused, but those will be part of another larger video I have planned. But here are 2 more random fun facts to end the video on. Showdown grants you plus 100% weapon swap speed while it's active, which isn't listed in the skill description, and Nisha's Lone Star class mod doesn't apply its passive gun damage boost if you equip it within your inventory. You need to either force equip it from the ground or reload the game while it's equipped. Don't know if other class mods also do that, I just accidentally came across this while testing things. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching and see ya everyone.